My husband abandoned me in the ICU. Day 3. He called screaming about men changing my locks. The sound of tearing metal doesn't stay in your ears. It settles into your bones, vibrating somewhere deep in your marrow long after the intersection is cleared and the police reports are filed. I learned this on a rainy Tuesday afternoon in downtown Seattle, when a distracted teenager in a delivery van ran a red light and T-boned my Lexus at 40 miles an hour. I remember the violent jerk of the seatbelt, the explosive white dust of the airbags, and then a heavy, suffocating darkness. When I woke up in the trauma ward at Harborview Medical Center, the world was reduced to sharp, agonizing fragments. 3 broken ribs on my left side, a hairline fracture in my collarbone, a concussion that made the fluorescent hospital lights pulse like strobe lights. Every breath I took felt like a jagged piece of glass turning in my chest. But the sharpest pain didn't come from my shattered ribs. It came from the foot of my hospital bed, where my husband of 18 years, Marcus, was standing, checking the time on his Rolex. He was wearing his charcoal Tom Ford suit, the one he reserved for board meetings. He didn't look at my bruised face or the 4 taped to my hand. He looked at his phone, his jaw tight with irritation. "The doctors say you're stable, Claire," he said, his voice carrying the smooth, practiced cadence of a man who negotiated commercial real estate deals for a living. "They're discharging you tomorrow morning. I've already arranged for a private transport service to take you home." I tried to speak, but my throat was raw from the intubation tube they had temporarily used. I managed a weak, rasping whisper. "You're not taking me home?" Marcus sighed, slipping the phone into his breast pocket. "I can't. The Chicago acquisition is falling apart. The sellers are getting cold feet, and if I'm not in the boardroom by tomorrow afternoon, we lose a $90 million portfolio. I have to fly out tonight. I'll be gone a week." He stepped closer, leaning over the bed, but he didn't touch me. He hadn't touched me in a way that mattered in years, but lying there, broken and heavily medicated, I desperately wanted him to. I wanted him to hold my good hand. I wanted him to tell me that the Chicago deal could burn to the ground, that his place was here. Instead, he gave me a thin, practiced smile. "You'll have a visiting nurse check on you for the first 3 days. You just need to rest. I'll call you from the hotel." He turned and walked out of the room. I listened to the rhythmic click of his Italian leather shoes fading down the linoleum hallway. I didn't cry. Crying required deep breaths, and deep breaths were a physical impossibility. I just stared at the ceiling, letting the Demerol pull me back under. The next day, the transport service brought me back to our home in Mercer Island. The house was a sprawling, mid-century modern masterpiece that I had completely redesigned. I am an architect. I built my career transforming cold, outdated structures into breathing, sustainable sanctuaries. I knew every inch of this house, every angle of light, every joint in the hardwood. But when the driver helped me through the front door and left me sitting in the armchair by the window, the house felt entirely foreign. It was silent. It was cavernous. And it was freezing. It was late October, and the damp chill of the Pacific Northwest had seeped into the glass walls. I was shivering, which caused my broken ribs to spasm, sending blinding waves of pain through my torso. I needed to turn up the heat, but the physical act of standing up and walking to the hallway thermostat felt like a summit attempt on Everest. My phone was resting on the side table. I reached for it with my good right arm, my fingers clumsy and stiff. I opened the Google Nest smart home app, intending to bump the Mercer Island living room up to 70 degrees. The app loaded, displaying the control dials for the different zones I managed. But my eyes didn't land on the Seattle house. They stopped on the icon for our vacation property in Aspen, Colorado. It was glowing a bright, active orange. The system was on. And it was set to exactly 72 degrees. I stared at the screen, my thumb hovering over the glass. The Aspen house was an A-frame cabin I had purchased 15 years ago with the small inheritance my grandfather left me. I had bought it long before Marcus started making real money, back when it was just a drafty, neglected shell in the shadow of the mountains. Over a decade, I poured my own income and architectural expertise into it, gutting it, expanding it, and turning it into a luxury eco-lodge. It was my pride. It was also supposed to be empty. We only used it in January and February for ski season, and occasionally in the summer. In October, it was placed in maintenance mode, the temperature strictly locked at 55 degrees to prevent the pipes from freezing. Marcus was the only other person with access to the app. 72 degrees. It was a highly specific number. Marcus had a bizarre, borderline obsessive fixation with ambient temperature. He claimed 72 degrees was the optimal human thermal comfort zone. Whether we were in a hotel, a rental car, or our own home, he always demanded the environment be exactly 72. A coldness that had nothing to do with the Seattle weather began to spread through my veins. I tapped the icon for the Aspen house. The app showed the system had been manually adjusted to 72 degrees yesterday evening, right around the time Marcus's flight to Chicago would have landed. I told myself I was being paranoid. The painkillers were making me delusional. Maybe the property management company was doing an emergency inspection. Maybe a sensor was malfunctioning. I needed to know. I closed the Nest app and opened the security interface. When I remodeled the Aspen house, Marcus had insisted we not put cameras inside the home because he valued his privacy. But he had forgotten about the secondary IP camera I installed on the exterior of the detached garage. It was a high-resolution, motion-activated lens pointed directly at the gravel driveway, meant to monitor for bears getting into the trash enclosures. It operated on a separate, hidden Wi-Fi subnet that I had configured myself. Marcus didn't even know the password to that router. My hand was remarkably steady as the feed buffered. The loading circle spun, and then the crisp, high-definition image of the Aspen driveway filled my screen. The afternoon sun was reflecting off the fresh mountain snow. Parked directly in front of the heavy oak doors of the cabin was a matte black Range Rover autobiography. Marcus's car. The one he supposedly left in long-term parking at Seattle-Tacoma Airport. I watched the live feed, the silence in my Seattle living room roaring in my ears. I didn't have to wait long. A few minutes later, the heavy front door of the cabin swung open. A young woman stepped out onto the porch. She was carrying 2 empty mugs and a bottle of Veuve Clicquot. She was young, maybe 25, with long, dark hair pulled into a messy knot. I recognized her instantly. It was Chloe. She was a junior analyst at Marcus's commercial real estate firm. She had attended our company holiday party 10 months ago, laughing too loudly at Marcus's jokes, touching his forearm when she spoke, looking at me with that subtle, pitying arrogance young women sometimes weaponize against older wives. But what made the breath catch in my throat, what sent a searing, white-hot spike of agony through my fractured ribs, wasn't just that she was there. It was what she was wearing. She was draped in my vintage, oversized cream cashmere sweater. The one I kept folded in the cedar chest at the foot of the master bed in Aspen. She walked to the edge of the porch, scooped a handful of clean snow to chill the champagne bottle, and laughed at something inside the house. A moment later, Marcus appeared in the frame. He was wearing his gray sweatpants, looking relaxed, looking rested. He wrapped his arms around Chloe from behind, burying his face in her neck. My sweater swallowed her small frame. I pressed the lock button on my phone. The screen went black. I sat in the armchair for 3 hours. The sun set over Lake Washington, casting long, gray shadows across my living room. I did not cry. My ribs physically would not allow it, but my mind was operating with a frightening, crystalline clarity. For 18 years, I had been the steady foundation upon which Marcus built his empire. I attended the dinners, I hosted the partners, I designed the homes that signaled his success to the world. When he had his financial crisis 7 years ago, I took on commercial commissions I hated just to keep his firm afloat. I was useful. I was dependable. And in return, he had left me in a hospital bed with a shattered chest so he could fly his 25-year-old subordinate to my sanctuary, wrap her in my clothes, and drink champagne while my bones knitted themselves back together in the dark. He thought he was safe. He thought I was immobilized, drugged, and blindly trusting. He thought the distance and his carefully crafted Chicago alibi made him untouchable. He had forgotten a very crucial legal detail about the Aspen property. Because I had purchased the cabin with my grandfather's inheritance before we were married, and because I had funded the renovations entirely through my own architectural LLC, the deed was held in a revocable living trust. I was the sole trustee. Marcus's name was not on the mortgage. His name was not on the deed. It was not marital property. Under Colorado law and the ironclad prenuptial agreement his own lawyers had drafted when he was paranoid about his future wealth, The Aspen house belonged exclusively to me. I picked up my phone and opened my contacts. I didn't call a divorce attorney. Not yet. Divorce is a slow, grinding bureaucracy that gives a man like Marcus time to hide assets, spin narratives, and manipulate the narrative. I didn't want to argue with him in mediation 6 months from now. I wanted to remove the ground from beneath his feet while he was standing on it. I scrolled down to a number saved under the name Robert Vance. Robert was a ruthless, high-volume real estate liquidator based in Denver. I had crossed paths with him on a few commercial zoning disputes. His firm specialized in acquiring luxury properties from distressed sellers, messy divorces, bankruptcies, quiet liquidations. He bought in all cash, sight unseen, at a massive discount, and he closed faster than a traditional bank could even process an application. I tapped the call button. He answered on the second ring. Claire, Robert's gravelly voice came through the speaker. Been a while. Tell me you're not calling to fight me on that Denver zoning permit again. I have a property I need to liquidate, Robert, I said, my voice eerily calm despite the gravelly rasp in my throat. It's a fully renovated, 4-bedroom luxury eco-lodge in Aspen. 5 minutes from the gondola. Appraised last year at $4.2 million. I heard the shifting of paper on his end. The businessman was instantly awake. Aspen? That's a premium market. Why are you calling me instead of listing it? Because I want it sold, closed, and transferred by Friday afternoon, I said. It was currently Wednesday. I own it outright. No liens, no secondary names on the deed. It's held in my trust. If you can wire the funds and record the deed in 48 hours, I will sell it to your firm for $2.8 million. Silence hung on the line. A $1.4 million discount was a blood in the water for a shark like Robert. 2.8. All cash, he repeated slowly, calculating the margins. Claire, a discount like that means you're running from something, or you're about to burn it down. Are there title issues? The title is immaculate. The survey is on file with Pitkin County. The only issue, I took a shallow, painful breath, is that there are unauthorized occupants currently residing in the property. Your firm will have to take possession and handle their removal immediately upon closing. Robert let out a low chuckle. He dealt with squatters, bitter ex-spouses, and delinquent tenants for a living. His firm employed a property management team that consisted mostly of off-duty law enforcement and ex-military contractors who specialized in rapid asset securing. If the paperwork is as clean as you say, Robert said, I'll have the purchase agreement in your inbox in an hour. We'll use a mobile notary for your signatures tomorrow. Funds will wire Friday at 2 p.m. After the wire clears, the property is mine, and whoever is inside it is trespassing on corporate property. Make sure your team is there bright and early Saturday morning, I said. They like to sleep in. I hung up. I sat back in the chair, the pain in my chest radiating into my shoulders, and I opened my text messages. Marcus had sent a message 20 minutes ago. Just got out of a brutal 8-hour session with the Chicago team. Going to order room service and crash. How are you feeling? Did the nurse come? I stared at the text. The sheer, effortless fluidity of his lie was breathtaking. He wasn't in a boardroom. He was 2 states away, sitting in the living room I designed, looking out at the mountains through the triple-pane glass I selected, with a girl half my age. I typed back with my good hand. The nurse came. Very sore, but resting. Eat something good. Don't work too hard. I watched the 3 little typing dots appear. I miss you. Just focusing on getting this deal done so I can come home to take care of you. I set the phone face down on the table. The nausea that hit me had nothing to do with the medication. The next 48 hours were a masterclass in compartmentalization. On Thursday morning, a mobile notary arrived at my house. She was a quiet, efficient woman who didn't ask questions about my bandages or the chest brace restricting my movements. I signed the heavy stack of closing documents, initialing every page, formally transferring ownership of Tierra Design Holdings' primary asset to Vance Capital Group. With every stroke of the pen, I felt a piece of my old life severing, dropping away into the abyss. It was terrifying, and it was the most intoxicating power I had ever felt. While I signed the papers, Marcus called. I put him on speakerphone. Hey, honey, he said. In the background, I could hear the faint, unmistakable sound of a Nespresso machine running. The Nespresso machine in the Aspen kitchen. Just checking in. The negotiations are dragging. These Chicago guys are relentless. I might have to stay through the weekend to lock this down. He wanted the weekend with Chloe. He wanted to take her into town for dinner, maybe go for a hike, play house in my sanctuary for 2 more days. I looked at the notary as I handed her back my driver's license. I understand, Marcus. You do what you need to do. The business comes first. You're the best, Claire. I'll make it up to you. I promise. I know you will, I said softly and ended the call. Friday afternoon arrived with a heavy, gray Seattle rainstorm beating against the windows. At exactly 2:14 p.m., my phone buzzed with an alert from my private banking app. Incoming wire transfer, Vance Capital Group LLC. Amount, $2,800,000. I opened the email from Robert that arrived a minute later. Deed recorded with Pitkin County. We are officially on title. The asset is ours. My team is mobilizing tomorrow morning to secure the property and change the locks. Pleasure doing business with you, Claire. I closed my laptop. It was done. The cabin was gone. Marcus was now sleeping in a house owned by a hostile corporate entity that had zero tolerance for trespassers. That night, for the first time since the accident, I slept deeply. I didn't feel the throbbing in my collarbone or the ache in my ribs. I felt hollowed out, but the void was clean. It was sanitized. Saturday morning, 6:45 a.m. Pacific Time, 7:45 a.m. in Aspen. My phone began to vibrate violently on the nightstand. The caller ID flashed Marcus's face, a professional headshot taken for Forbes magazine last year. He looked confident, commanding, invincible. I let it ring until it went to voicemail. It rang again immediately, and then a third time. On the 4th ring, I swiped the screen and brought the phone to my ear. I didn't say hello. Claire. Thank God. Are you awake? Marcus's voice was frantic, breathless, pitched an octave higher than normal. The polished executive veneer was completely shattered. I'm awake, Marcus. What's wrong? Is the Chicago wind too loud? I asked, my voice flat, devoid of any sleepy confusion. Claire, listen to me carefully. Something insane is happening. I need you to call the Aspen police. I adjusted the pillows behind my back, wincing slightly as my ribs shifted. Why would I call the Aspen police for you, Marcus? You're in Chicago. There was a fraction of a second of dead air. The gears in his head ground together, sparking, failing to catch. What? No, I had to fly to Aspen. To meet a secondary investor. But Claire, listen, there are men here. 4 guys in tactical gear just unlocked the front door. They're in the kitchen. They're saying they own the house. They're threatening to physically throw me out if I don't leave in 10 minutes. I don't understand why that's a problem, Marcus. It's their house. Silence. Complete, suffocating silence on the other end of the line. I could hear his rapid, panicked breathing. What? What are you talking about? He stammered, the fear bleeding into confusion. I sold it, Marcus. The deed was recorded yesterday afternoon. You are currently trespassing on property owned by Vance Capital Group. They are a very aggressive commercial landlord. I suggest you listen to them. You sold it, he screamed, dropping all pretense. You can't sell marital property without my signature, you psychotic bitch. I'll have you arrested for fraud. It's a revocable living trust funded by premarital assets, Marcus. You know this. Your lawyers made sure of it when we got married, remember? To protect your startup capital in case I ever wanted a divorce. It works both ways. The cabin was mine, and now it belongs to Robert Vance. Claire, stop this. Call them off. They have zip ties. They're boxing up the living room. I could hear a man's voice shouting in the background, ordering someone to step away from the kitchen island. Then another sound. A high-pitched, terrified sob. A woman's voice. Marcus, please, what is happening? Who are these people? Chloe was crying. I let the sound of her panic wash over me. It was a terrible thing to find satisfaction in another woman's terror, but I was long past the point of grace. Marcus, I said, my voice cutting through the chaos over the phone like a scalpel. Put Chloe on the line. The silence returned, heavier this time. The realization of just how completely he had been caught hit him with the force of a freight train. There was no spinning this. There was no gaslighting his way out of it. I knew exactly who was there and exactly what he had done. Claire, he whispered, his voice cracking. Please, don't do this. Put her on the phone, Marcus, or I hang up, and whatever Robert's security team does to a couple of squatters resisting eviction is out of my hands. I heard the fumbling of the phone. Then a shaky, tear-soaked voice. Hello, Chloe squeaked. Chloe, this is Claire, Marcus's wife. Oh my God, Mrs. Sterling, I'm so sorry, I didn't know. He told me you two were separated, he told me. Chloe, shut up, I commanded. My tone was absolute zero. The crying stopped instantly. I don't care what he told you. I don't care about your relationship. What I care about is the vintage cream cashmere sweater you were wearing on the porch on Wednesday. Take it off, fold it, and leave it on the kitchen counter. If you try to pack it in your bag, the men standing next to you will have you arrested for theft. Do you understand? Yes, she sobbed. Yes, okay. Give the phone back to my husband. A rustling sound. Claire, this is insane, Marcus pleaded, his voice stripped of all dignity. My car keys are upstairs. They won't let me go up. I'm in my pajamas. It's 20 degrees outside. The property manager will escort you to your vehicle when you are fully off the premises. Enjoy the drive back to Seattle, Marcus. I imagine it'll be a quiet one. Claire, you can't just do this. We have to talk. I'm your husband. Not anymore, I said. And Marcus. What? He sobbed. Don't bother driving back to the Mercer Island house. I spent yesterday packing your suits. They're at a climate-controlled storage unit in Bellevue. I emailed your assistant the access code. The locks here have already been changed. I hung up the phone. I pressed the power button, shutting the device down completely, cutting off the inevitable flood of frantic calls and texts. I sat in the silence of my home. The rain was still drumming softly against the glass walls. I looked around the massive living room. It was empty, but it no longer felt cold. The recovery process for broken ribs is slow and entirely unglamorous. You cannot cast a rib. You cannot surgically fix it. You simply have to endure the pain, breathe through it, and trust that the body will knit the fractures back together with time. You are forced to sit still, to rest, to let the internal architecture rebuild itself stronger than before. The divorce was brutal, but highly efficient. Marcus tried to fight me, of course. He hired a shark of an attorney who tried to claim the sale of the Aspen house was an illegal dissipation of marital assets. But my paperwork was flawless. The trust was impenetrable. Furthermore, because he had driven his 25-year-old subordinate across state lines and funded the illicit vacation using company resources, the board of his firm caught wind of it. It became a human resources nightmare. They forced him into an early, quiet resignation to avoid a sexual harassment and misappropriation scandal. He lost his job, he lost his sanctuary in the mountains, and he lost the woman who had spent 2 decades keeping his life perfectly calibrated. I heard through mutual acquaintances that Chloe left him a month later, once she realized the prestige and the money were suddenly tied up in litigation. I am 50 years old now. It has been 2 years since the accident. I still live in the house on Mercer Island, though I've redesigned it again. I knocked down the dark, heavy walls Marcus loved and replaced them with open, breathing spaces that let the natural light pour in. I launched my own independent architectural firm, specializing entirely in restorative, sustainable design for women seeking sanctuary. Sometimes, when the winter chill rolls in off Lake Washington, I feel a dull ache in my left ribs where the fractures healed. It's an old pain, familiar and dull. It doesn't hurt anymore. It just reminds me that the bone was broken and that it healed. Every evening, when I get ready for bed, I walk past the digital thermostat in the hallway. I reach out and I turn the temperature down to a crisp, refreshing 68 degrees. Then I turn off the lights and I sleep in the quiet, absolute peace of a house that belongs entirely to me.